Hey there, Chad here. Thanks for joining me. This is Ostranauts, and this is version or build 0.14 of that game, which included a lot of new content. Some of that content was the ability to travel between planets or areas, and so in my previous video, we fired up the torch drive and flew to Venus, specifically to the Venus orbital station called VORB. Now, while at Venus, I thought I would go ahead and give a quick tour of the orbital station. I'm not really sure what all there is to do in the area. There really aren't any ships to salvage. There aren't any derelicts in this part of space. So I think in my mind there was probably going to be some other ships to come out and take a look at. Not that I was running low on those at KLEG, but I just thought that might be one of the logical steps of what would be going on here. Unfortunately, there is no boneyard here. There literally aren't any ships to buy that are derelicts. You can buy new ships, and we'll take a quick look at that. But other than that, I'm not quite sure what else there might be to do in the area. Now, I did read that there are like races. You can race your ship and some other things like that, but I'm guessing that stuff is all happening on the planet side colonies or whatever we want to call them. There's a few stations that you can get to that are on the planet. My ship is not capable of doing that, so I can't do it just yet. I could take a shuttle to it, but the shuttle's a little expensive and I don't really have a whole lot of cash to play with. When you first go on to VORB, you get this little notification. It just tells you about being at the station and that it can be used for refueling. There are 3 levels to this station, and we'll take a look at all 3. This is the main station level, which is like the cargo and dock. When you are docking with the station, there are 2 destinations when you're telling it that where you want to dock. One is the main level, and then the second one says auxiliary, and that is one of the decks we can visit. We'll do that here real quick. Let's go ahead and just look at the stations that are available though. First, there is the shuttle. We can speed up time here, I guess. So there's a few places we can get to using the shuttle system. I don't really have a whole lot of cash to spend right now, so I'm going to hold off. Looks like I have a lot, but as you're going to see here, as we move to the next kiosk, which is fuel, I'm going to spend most of that. So helium is expensive, and I need a lot of it, and we need some heavy water. Probably get by without adding to the RCS, but it's just not really a good idea. And probably okay to leave the oxygen as well, but we'll go ahead and do that. We can purchase 1 penny's worth of electricity just to top off. So 78,000 credits is what we're putting into fuel. So we have about 40,000 left. That was a pretty good chunk. We are going to have to spend just a little bit in docking fees, so it won't be 40,000, but enough that it's cutting it too close that I'm not feeling like going sightseeing right now is a good idea. Another kiosk that is here on this level is the cargo pod kiosk. And this is something I hope to cover in the near future. I don't have cargo pods yet, so I really haven't figured out how this works. The long and short of it is you can trade cargo between major stations using these, and my understanding is it can be pretty profitable. So I want to take a look at that, see if it really makes sense to pursue that in the future. I can get cargo pods back at KLEG. You can salvage them off of ships. That's probably what I'll do. There is a coffee machine. There's actually 2 on this level. There are no food kiosks. There's no like carts. I know we have food carts back on the KLEG station. The only place to get food is at supplies. You can go there and get a couple of rations. That is all that's available to us. Now the good news is for my trip, I have enough food to get back. If you don't, that is your only option. Here are the kiosks for the embassies. There's a KLEG or OLEG, I guess. Not really sure I know the difference between the 2. One I think is the station and the other is the principality or whatever you want to call it. We have one for Venus Encantado and we have one for Venus Newcal. If we look at these, they work exactly like the ones that were back on KLEG. They have the same options, none of which I can afford right now, so we're just going to move on from that. Okay, that's the kiosks. Mentioned supplies, there's scrap. We do have a ship kiosk down here. And again, it works just like the one back home. There are some different ships though. I did want to show this. So these are ships that can go in the atmosphere of Venus so that you can get to planet side. Now I can't afford these just yet, but this is something to pursue, I guess. And so I'll be kind of looking in that direction to maybe try to pilot down to the surface myself. The cheapest one I saw is this one for just under 400,000. So I'm a little bit of a ways before I'm really going to be able to do that. I think in the short term, if I want to go sightseeing, it's going to be a shuttle for me. Let's go ahead and hit the transit. That's all the kiosks and main functionality on this deck. So we'll hit the kiosk. The first one we'll go to is going to be, we'll go to the auxiliary deck. This takes about 5 seconds to load because it's extremely small. That is it. That is 100% of it. If you dock here, your ship I think ends up over here. Is that where yeah, that's where the airlock is. And you can't refuel. There's very few things you can do other than go to some of the other levels. There is a coffee machine. You'll notice that this area is very much in disrepair. Okay, we'll go hit the other one, which is the habitation level. This area is a little bigger. It does have a gig nexus, and we'll check that out here in just a minute. There's a self-care station down here, so you can get some medical assistance if you need it. There are a few bunks you can hit. This one's probably locked off, but this one is not. Oh, actually it is. But there's a few up here where you can go and sleep if you need to. I have bunks on my ship, so I don't really need to do that. And I think we've hit the highlights of this one as well. There's really not a whole lot of other stuff in this one either. So that is my experience of VORB. I did notice, well, as we head over here, we're going to take a look at the gig nexus, but I did notice that if I take a look at my guy, he now has a tag called Visited VORB. Okay, my thought is I'm going to fly back to KLEG and try to make some money to upgrade the ship a little more, maybe make it so I can travel a little further. Oh, that's not my ship. But so I can travel a little further and maybe a little more comfortably. And I'd also like to eventually hire a crew member and show how some of the crew functions work. In order to do that, I need to save a little bit more money. But my one thought is maybe there's a gig that starts here and goes back to KLEG. And if that's the case, I'm probably going to pick that up and see if I can earn a little bit of extra cash. So I haven't done a gig on my tutorial session, so let's go ahead and cover that real quick, just in case you've never used it. I have done a few of them in my personal playthrough. I tended to do shorter ones that could be done in just a few minutes back on the station. I believe I did take one where I had previously visited a ship and knew where it was, so I was able to go back and get that, and that one paid me a little bit better. But in general, the ones that are just on the same station don't pay much at all. Your mileage may vary, and of course, you might have a different tolerance for those kinds of tasks. So this one is taking us to a ship that's 17,000 kilometers away. That is no small distance. So we're going to skip that one. And let's go through here and see if there's anything that looks like it lands at KLEG. Investigate a death, we'll skip that. Here's a courier that goes to Long Beach Terminal. Porto Encando, Long Beach, another death. And we've cycled through them, I think. So nothing for us to grab this time, unfortunately. So I'll tell you what though, let's look at this real quick just to give you some idea of what we're looking at. When you take one of these, it gives you the title. It's basically the type. You'll notice there's somewhere courier, and then there was investigate death. I feel like there's something else. I can't remember what it is right now. It gives you a duration. This is how much time you have to complete the task. I don't know that there's a penalty, but I would assume that you take a hit. You know, Benjamin's not going to like you as much if you say you're going to go do this and then you don't. So there's probably some sort of reputation hit with individuals or with groups. And it does cost a little money to take a gig. So that's something to consider as well. This particular one though pays out almost 200,000. And then you'll notice these other numbers here. So what happens here is if you do it more quickly than they ask, you get a bonus. So if you do it in half the time, they double the money. If you do it in a quarter of the time, they quadruple the money. If you do it in, I'm going to assume this is going to be an eighth of the time, it'll be 8 times the original payout. So the faster you can deliver one of these, the more money you'll make. That seems to hold true for all of these if we look at these numbers. So this isn't quite 4 times. It's close. It's not exactly 4 times, right? 4 times 8 is 32. So that didn't quite line up, but it's pretty close. You'll notice this one gives you 45 minutes down from 6 hours. So that's what you're dealing with. There is a pickup locker for a lot of these. Well, the courier ones are all going to need you to pick something up. And that can be a little confusing. The location of the locker is really super simple. I'm not going to actually take it, and I'm not sure that it's going to show me, but let's assume I take this one here. We're on the habitation level. Venus orbital is the pickup locker. So I accept this one. I'm not going to, but if I had, we would then come out to here. And if I right click it again, there'll be another option here that is access locker. And that is what you use to pick up whatever it is that you are moving with your ship. It'll just toss it into your inventory and you just carry it back to your ship and you head off and deliver it. They often have something to do with what you're being asked to do. So I had one where it asked me to move bandages. Someone needed bandages for negotiation of all things, and it was 10 strips of cloth is what I was passing along. So that is what you can kind of expect. Some of them will be like documentation. There might be, I think there's like holding patches or some of them. So those are the kinds of missions that you might run into. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go look at the other one that was back on the port and cargo deck and see if there's any other missions that might be available there. Generally, they're synced up, so I don't think I'm going to see anything new. But I'm going to give it a try just in case. This one is over here. And we have a courier. Yeah, Dark Fusion. We already saw that one. Punished Crow, Long Beach Terminal. Yeah, these are all the same. Now there is one other thing I can try to do. I've never really had success with it. We can hit this refresh, and every once in a while we might get something new in there, but it doesn't look like we did. So yeah, nothing that's really worth the effort to run through. There is one other thing I want to try to cover today, and that is how do we get back to KLEG. Now I'm not going to make the whole trip back, but we're going to at least start the process. The first thing I'm going to do is come down here, and I'm realizing I think my reactor is still running. Let's take a quick peek at that. Probably should have turned it off. I don't know, there's not exactly written rules on what you should or shouldn't do with it. It probably would have made sense to turn it off. I didn't, so this is where we're at. So the reactor is running. We're just going to leave that alone. But it's one less step I'll need to do in order to get back. If your reactor's not running, you'll need to start it at some point. And let's take a look and see. So as I mentioned, there really aren't any ships around to work with. Now I'm between 2 bodies, and I'm not exactly sure what these are. This is New Cal, and I'm going to guess this is the other one in Cantino. Yeah, that's the aerostat for it. So I suppose, okay, that says that's Venus, and that says that, oh, I know what's going on here. Okay, so I have a course that's plotted, and it has set this fast forward skip. This shows you where things are going to be in the future. In this case, it's 10 minutes from now. This is where Venus is going to be. That can be really super confusing. We want to reset that down to nothing. So this makes a lot more sense now. So we have just Venus, one Venus here. This is where it's at, and we are over here. So why this is different than leaving KLEG is Venus has a substantial gravitational pull. And as we try to leave, it's going to try to pull us in. So we're going to use a considerable amount of delta V to get away from Venus. And that's kind of why I wanted to show this a little bit. Now I think this ring here, I think that's the no wake zone. We're going to click this button here. And so I think when we're docked, it just shows those. It doesn't seem to go on and off. When we're moving, a lot of times, oh, you know what? My apologies. There's one right there. So if I turn that off, yeah, there's the no wake zone around the station. So I can't plot a course while I'm in here. I need to get outside of this before I can actually do the plot and get going. So let's go ahead and start the process of leaving. And I'll show you how I tend to do this. So the first step is, of course, to undock. And we don't have a lot of time to mess around once we've done that. That's something to note because you're immediately being affected by gravity, which is pulling you in a direction you don't want to go. And so you have to use energy to counter that. So we're going to unclamp. And there we go. The alarm's going off, and we're going to back away as best we can. And I'm not even getting anything. I'm barely moving. Okay, so I'm rotating now. And I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to just accelerate. I'm going to actually speed up time while I'm accelerating so we actually see what's happening here. And you'll notice I'm kind of moving in a weird direction comparatively to the station. So I want to get to that ring there. And of course now I'm just spinning, and I don't like that either. So I want to get to that ring, and then I'm going to plot a course and get the heck out of Dodge. I'm still accelerating, but I'm going to start slowing down the clock a little bit. And as you can see, I've used 20% of my RCS, so that's not sustainable. So once we're outside of this, you'll notice this no wake light will go off, and there it goes. We're going to pause. I'm going to slow it down to 1 time for when I come back, but currently we're paused. My reactor is running. I need to turn that to active, and I need to plot a course. And it has now plotted a course. Hey there, Editor Chad here. So I made a little mistake here. When I plotted that course, I had Venus selected. And that was a mistake because we don't really want to fly to Venus. We want to fly back to KLEG. So instead of having you endure the next minute or two of me trying to figure out what I did wrong, I'm just going to cut it out. And if you hear me say something like, okay, we're going to plot it again, it's because that's what I did. Sorry about that, and hopefully from this point forward, it's fairly straightforward what happened there. Thanks. Back to real time, Chad. That looks about right. Come up here and move over to targeting so we can zoom in and find the one we want. There it is. Back to ship. There we are. And now we will plot again. It's still kind of passing through, but my sense is that by the time we get here, Venus will have moved. That's the whole idea of what this guy up here does. In fact, you'll notice this is saying it's going to take 3.5 days, right? So if we pull way out here, we probably, we'll see another Venus way over here, which shows where that would be for the course of doing that journey. So right now we are going to use almost all of our fuel, and we're going to do 1.62 Gs to get there in 82 hours. I need to lower the Gs just a little bit. I guess I don't have to. I feel like I should. We can increase the duration of the drift as well, and so that'll save us a little bit of fuel. This is all the fuel we have, though, is well, here it is. We have 26 hours of actual reactant fuel. So what we can do is we can fire the engine to accelerate for 13 hours and then to decelerate for 13 hours. That's really what that reflects. So of the 84 hours, we will be using the engine for 25 of them, and in the middle, we will be drifting. We can increase that amount of drift. As you can see, that drops the amount of time on the engine dramatically, but it also increases the journey to, 6 weeks, 5 weeks. We don't want to do that. Oh, I'm sorry, 4 months. So we definitely don't want to do that. We're going to keep this to where it's right around our fuel level, which was 26. I'm going to have to get just under it. There we go. So 82 hours. That might be the best we can do. Maybe go just a little longer and then reduce the G's just a hair. I think I'm willing to go up to 90 hours. That would be what, 3 and 3/4 days? A little more than that. 3 and 3/4 days, yeah, at 90 hours. So we're a little under that right now. We're going to call it 3.5 days. That will work. We're going to plot the course. It's already plotted, I guess. We're just messing with the numbers. I didn't really have to plot it again. But then to kick it off, we're going to hit course engage. And it lights up and stays lit as soon as I unpause. We're going to start to accelerate. Now we already were moving a little bit, right? Because I had messed up. But that will re-engage the engine and we will start our new course. And we'll be back at KLEG in 85 hours. Okay, there we go. As you can see, we're firing this up again and accelerating. And I'm carrying too much weight, so I can barely move. And so this will be a long journey. For the next 12 hours, I'm going to be stuck to the floor. I will do some fast forwarding. I'm not going to have you follow me all the way back, but my plan is to get back to KLEG, make a little bit of money, look into cargo pods, and then see about coming back to Venus or perhaps another destination. If I can find a little more fuel, if I can find another HE3 tank, that would be helpful. I could expand the distance of my journeys just a little bit, but we might try to look at something else. And I'm also going to look into maybe hiring a crew member. So this is off and running. It's doing its thing. I can come out here and I can change clothes again if I want to, or I can go sleep. In fact, I think he's going to need to go eat. He's hungry right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and then fast forward myself back to KLEG and see about making a little bit of cash. I think that covers it for this episode. We talked about what is at the Venus orbital station and we talked about how to get away from it. So we got to see that. I think that'll cover it. I appreciate your time. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I hope you will consider doing so. That would help me out. But until next time, I appreciate you watching and fair travels.